We're kicking off the panel with a polling question, which is what percentage of smartphone users in the US are mobile payments users? A, 15%, B, 25%, C, 30%, and D, 40%. And as we're waiting for that to show up, I wanted to start with Colleen, who's an executive at Mastercard. So we'll see from the answer soon, but there has been steady growth in mobile payments over the past several years, but it's still nowhere near mass market adoption. So what needs to happen for us to get there?
Well, I think simplicity is going to be really important for consumers to want to make payments and incorporate making payments in their lives. Today's environment to make payments it can be very complex. Different modalities, either in the retail experience, the e-commerce experience, or to pay bills. And so I think what we'll need to see is simplicity kind of be introduced so that a consumer actually has a consistent and really simple experience for all different types of payments, bills, retail experiences, et cetera.
And now if we look at the answers, all right, about a quarter of you were correct. The answer is 25%, so congrats to you who got that correct. And that leads into the second polling question, which is which mobile payments platform has the most users? A, Starbucks, B, Apple Pay, C, Google Pay, or D, Samsung Pay? I just want to give people a couple seconds to start answering that. Okay, see a lot of flip-flopping over there. Okay, well, people are pretty spot on with this one. Kevin, I want to get your take on why it is that Starbucks is actually the most popular mobile payments method.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, look, there's, I think, first and foremost, the duration of the service that was in market. But when you think about a mobile payment or a mobile payment experience, I think what's fundamental to that is the exchange of value for the consumer. That seems really simple, right? But value can be perceived in a number of different ways. That could be convenience. So, Colleen, to your point about simplicity, I don't necessarily have to pull the plastic out of my wallet. Value could be in monetary value. I'm getting a contextual reward or an offer, right? But I think if you look at the Starbucks example, that's a great one where there was a loyalty program that was attached to it. So there was an incentive to, change my method of behavior, be able to pull that out. And I think that the proof is in the pudding when you think about the adoption. So there was the exchange of value, therefore it drove commercialization and adoption.
And Colleen, in more recent years, we've seen many startups from Stripe and Adyen and Square start to sort of take ownership of a certain part of the digital payments processing system. So how has Mastercard's relationship with those startups evolved over the past few years?
So listen, I think we look at all of those players as partners. We're about trying to make more cash and check payments electronic or digitized. And we see that through partnerships with different players in the ecosystem, we can do that. And so we're working to have sort of either the 16-digit credit card or prepaid card actually power a digital solution and actually convert it from what is a sort of paper transaction to an electronic transaction. So again, partnership is the way we're going about it.
Right, and Wirecard was actually founded in 1999 when dawn of the e-commerce age, and you've also had to deal with a growing influx of competition. So how do you see that competitive landscape shaking out?
Sure, absolutely. So, for us, I think our biggest competitor is cash. So with 80 to 85% of transactions globally still being in cash, we see the opportunity to, ride and drive on the back of that adoption and drive to digital acceleration. So with partners like Mastercard and our ability to be able to, achieve that not only by providing end-to-end capabilities on 5 continents, but really also think about how we tackle together and jointly the convergence of what was originally in store, then viewed on a desktop, moving to a mobile, and now new channels like voice. For us, ultimately, that competitive landscape, we think we're well positioned as we think about those kind of macro and secular trends.
And you mentioned some of those new payments methods that
Sure.
are being adopted, whether that's wearables, mobile, voice, but with each new method that's adopted, all these companies have to adopt the same standards. So what are some of the security risks, Colleen, that come as a result of each new payments method that's created?
Well, I think there's always a risk that your digital footprint is in more places than you want it to be as a consumer. We're really committed to ensuring that the security environment is good for the consumer, that we limit where passwords and IDs are, et cetera. And we're also very committed to actually bringing new solutions to security. We've recently invested in a company that will know whether, because you hold your device slightly differently than perhaps an imposter does, just at an angle, that we can tell the difference and enable partners to actually not authenticate that transaction. So our commitment is around the newest technology to solve what is an age-old problem when that's people trying to cheat.
And do you think companies in this space are investing enough in fraud detection, preventing security breaches?
There's never enough investment because there's the fraudsters are just as vested in being successful as we are in beating them. So, I think you have to continue to invest, and you have to look for the latest technologies, biometrics, and AI to actually tackle what's out there.
And what are some of the biggest technological innovations Mastercard has actually developed over the past few years, whether that's biometrics, as you mentioned, tokenization?
So I think biometrics is a big one for us. We started out with selfie pay, was that maybe probably 6 or 7 years ago, and that predates some of the facial recognition that we now see in every device. That company I mentioned, New Data, that actually looks at how you're holding your device or how you're typing into your phone and actually can program that intelligence into security solutions for different partners. So we're investing in those biometrics to really make it a better experience. I think tokenization is really going to be a big part of how digitization happens in payments, because when you can tokenize a payment, take away all the payment credentials and information, then you make it a much more secure environment for players to integrate on top with an application that makes sense for the consumer.
And Kevin, what do you see as the next frontier of payments? More and more people are having Amazon Alexas and Google Homes in their houses. Are we going to see more people paying with voice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for us, our position is from an ecosystem standpoint, we see one technology stack being able to deliver these different channels, and voice, of course, is gonna take on, right. There's a number of players that have launched that have been testing for years, and I think a recent study showed that approximately a third of U.S. consumers have some kind of voice device at this point, and that's at the end of last year, a $2 billion market that's growing to a $40 billion market by 2022. So we definitely see the predictions and the acceleration there. And look, I think going back to the initial mobile wallet conversation, it comes down to convenience. It comes down to user behavior, right? So the things that you're going to go into a store to buy are going to be different of that you're perfectly willing to buy on your mobile, of which are going to be different than maybe you would order as you're chopping vegetables in your kitchen, right? So the consumables that you're going to buy with paper towels are still going to be different, again, than the sofa that I'm really going to want to go touch and feel. So for us, really, that's just a very clear example of those omni-channel solutions and those convergence of those channels in a way that for all of us, when we leave here today and go as consumers, we're going to engage with smartly and be really efficient with our time. Mm-hmm.
And some of your marquee clients include WeChat Pay, Alipay, allowing Chinese tourists to buy goods in Europe. So can you talk to me a little bit about the benefits that you've gained from that relationship and what you've learned from working with these big Chinese companies?
Sure, absolutely. So first and foremost, it's an honor for us to be able to think about just this amazing growth story in payments and being part of that expansion out into Europe. So, look, I think one of the big trends that we're excited about being a part of is the increasingly globalization and the borderless kind of world that we're living in. And the Chinese tourism trend has been a great example of that. So for us, the ability to be able to enable Alipay and WeChat Pay with luxury good brands, in duty-free, in airports, right, in these places where commerce is happening, is a great proof point for us and where we play a role in the ecosystem. But I think what's really interesting is if you look at some of those trends, recently we had conducted a study, and so the average Alipay payment by Wirecard in Europe is 800 euros. The single largest transaction we saw by Wirecard via Alipay was actually 40,000 euros in the luxury segment. So I think that's just a proof point of where we see not only a secular trend, but that translating into a real material partnership that's translating into an actual transaction. So it's a good example of it.
And do you believe that trend of not only more purchases more often, but also larger and larger purchases over mobile will make its way to the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think that trend of globalization applies very much, here as well as everywhere. So the ability for us, sure, to be part of something that's a groundswell movement. And again, it was an amazing growth that, even 5 years ago, and you look at China and the growth that we've seen there, that's unbelievable. But I think, again, it just proves to us that being on 5 continents, being and operating on a global scale positions us well to be able to think about how we integrate with all partner types and really deliver payment choice and ubiquity, which gets back to the original premise.
And Colleen, on that note, in China, we've seen Ant Financial, which makes Alipay, as well as Tencent, allow consumers to make payments very easily and cheaply without any reliance on the banking infrastructure. So do you think that could be a future here, and are you concerned about?
Well, I think the sort of U.S. payment ecosystem is quite different. We have a very fragmented system that does rely on banking. We have over 8,000 banks last I took a look at it. So I don't see that actually happening overnight in any way, but I do see that we're going to go to an environment where consumers will want more choice, and they'll want to make payments on their card, or they'll want to make payments from their DDA account, and they'll want to all do that in a mobile environment. So I think the focus for the innovators here, for the financial institutions and folks like Mastercard, is around allowing enough choice for consumers to make the payments the way they want to.
Mm-hmm. And how is Wirecard using new technologies like artificial intelligence across the business, and where is it proving most useful?
Sure, absolutely. So, we'll call it a new technology, but in the 18 plus years, when I think about our fraud prevention suite, right, and the ability to ultimately, if one of our core value propositions to our clients, airlines, retail goods, e-com, is the ability to kind of root out fraud by allowing throughput. So if that's fundamentally the premise for us, starting life focusing on the e-com space and then growing to offline, we had the advantageous position of getting that digital data from day one, being able to leverage machine learning off the back of it, and then being able to decision transactions. So for us, we've been doing it for some time, and I think that as computing power has increased, as other partners in the ecosystem has come along, we're able to take that into other channels as we continue to see the convergence of those ecosystems.
And Wirecard is very well known in Europe, and here in North America, you're really building out the brand and the business. Do you find that you're often going head-to-head to an Adyen or Stripe, and how do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, so the way that I talked a couple about these secular trends, like the increasing globality of the world, the convergence to the channel. For us, our business is predicated on delivering for the 38,000 enterprise customers and 212,000 SMBs we have around the world, and not only being able to deliver capabilities across our commerce platform in 5 continents, but truly being able to deliver whether you are accepting a payment via any channel, the gateway you're processing that through, the ability to deliver payroll, 1099 or freelance workers here, or even rebates and refunds. So really kind of true examples of that end-to-end commerce value chain. And for that value proposition on a global scale, we feel like we're positioned well, and we're really excited about what's ahead.
And Visa and Mastercard recently teamed up to create this online checkout button that seems to compete with Amazon Pay, with PayPal. Can you talk about
So I look at it not as competition, but instead of bringing standards to an environment that if we have standards there, we're going to see some of what that mobile payment trend will look like be vastly different, because merchants want and consumers want a more consistent experience across all the places where they want to make a payment. And what we're doing with SRC is exactly that.
And how has development been? Is there a timeline?
I will tell you that that's not my area of expertise, and so I'll take a pass on that question. That was a good one.
Thank you for that. Kevin, I also want to talk about the partnership Wirecard has with Mastercard doing mobile payments in Europe. What has that been like? What is wearable adoption like in Europe?
Yeah, so when we think about the 130 payment acceptance types we work with around the world, what for us being in the ecosystem and putting our consumers in the middle, what's most important is ubiquity and choice. So we've had a really successful partnership with Mastercard, whether it's the launch of within our Boon B2C mobile payments app, so testing different form factors. For us, again, right, so we talked about voice earlier, but the ability to say wearables, whether it's Garmin Pay, Fitbit Pay, ubiquity is gonna rule the day as we all, as again, consumers leave here and pay with different things. So for us, it's testing into that environment and working with trusted partners to be able to help scale those services.
Mm-hmm. And blockchain's been hailed as a potential solver of cross-border payments, and Mastercard is a big innovation lab. So how have you been experimenting, applying blockchain?
Yeah, so actually correspondent banking, or the ability to move money across borders, has actually been one of the areas where we have some blockchain proofs of concept going on right now. What we're looking for is where there are significant pain points where sort of that distributed ledger will actually be an answer. But I look at blockchain as being one of those things, like I said this to someone earlier today, it's one of we have to place a lot of chips on different bets because we don't know what the future holds. And I think blockchain is actually a great technology, but not quite sure how it will end up. But it's important that we actually put, a chip on black, right?
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, similar to Mastercard, we have a labs, group too, and as we think about where the future is going to be, and sooner than you think, right? As the tagline here, testing into blockchain, understanding the potential to marry the physical supply chain with the financial supply chain to be able to have traceability of materials. These are all really important things that ultimately are important for our clients and their end consumers as well, where goods are being sourced from. So in the marrying of those supply chains, that again is a core place that we probably both sit in that ecosystem, and we can kind of understand what those implications are and deliver on it.
But the technology really is just the enabler. It's the applications that we build on top of it that address the pain points of the end user that will really matter. And whether it's blockchain or another technology, that's just the case. But I think it's really more important to make sure you're having value-added services that there's a willingness to be for someone to pay for.
Couldn't agree more.
We have about a minute left, so I just want to get each of your best predictions for the proportion of payments in the next 5 or 10 years that you think will be done over mobile, wearable, voice, or driverless cars, any other area.
Well, I think here in the U.S., we will break sort of that 50% number within the next 4 or 5 years. And there's going to be I think real-time payments is actually going to be a big driver in that, because when you marry real-time payments with real-time information and confirmation, and give the consumer the option to choose between paying via card or out of their DDA account, then that opens up the arena for more adoption. So 50% within the next five years.
All right, that's a fair point, and I think that when we see the growth and the adoption of those services, right, in those charts, the first million to TV, right, there was always the longer growth charts, and we see it getting steeper and steeper. So as we continue to think about eating away at cash and being able to deliver, safe bet.